Well, good afternoon, everyone. We would like to welcome all of our conducive V-locity customers to today's webinar. My name is Brian Moore, and I'm the SVP of Sales and Marketing here at Conducive Technologies. Also joined on the line today that's going to give us the live demo of the latest version of V-locity 7 that was just released. That's Rick Kadruvi, our Chief Architect. And Rick, you've been around here at the company for just a couple days, haven't you?
Just a few days, Brian. So yeah, the very earliest stages when we did our very earliest things. I was involved with I was one of the co-founders originally.
Yep. So if those that are on the line, it's a possibility that you may have used a product called Diskkeeper in the past, known for years and years and years for being the #1 defrag utility for Windows systems. Well, you have the guy on the call with you right now who has a better understanding of the native NTFS file system, perhaps better than anyone outside of Microsoft. And I know that everyone who's on the WebEx now, clearly we don't need to cover this slide. You know who Conducive Technologies is, but at least, Rick, it's probably worth taking those customers, particularly newer customers. They may have come in the fold in the last 5 years or so, and in the last 5 years, the company has been known as Conducive Technologies. We moved our IP upstream, where we're not even touching the physical layer at all, but rather this is about proactive prevention to solve those Windows inefficiencies, so that way it's applicable from a performance standpoint, not just to disk, but it's also for hybrid storage systems, all flash storage systems. Most of our customers now are running us on top of either hybrid or all flash storage, and clearly also what we're doing the caching side of it. But Rick, you've been here. In fact, what employee number were you?
Well, originally I wasn't actually an employee. I was, as I said, one of the co-founders, and I had my own company, and I did all the development as a partnership with Craig Jensen back when it was Executive Software, and and then I think Gary's on the phone, and he was one of the very earliest employees. And as Brian
was, and Rick, that's actually the question that's embedded in my brain as I do so many of these with GQ. That's the tee-up question I give for GQ. But yeah, for our audience, I mean, it's a real treat for them just to be able to listen into those the minds behind the technology. It's very usual when you see the stints that have been done here at this company from a technology standpoint, because how long has it been, Rick?
Well, I guess you've got down 35 years of optimization experience, and I've been doing it a little longer than that. But one of the things that Brian alluded to is that one of my chief jobs down through the years has been to stay ahead of technology. So while you could look at us as who we used to be, we're constantly looking forward to where the environment's going. We've worked with OEMs down through the years in the very earliest days of SSD technologies and other kinds of technologies. And so our thing is really staying on top of the technology, being there before it arrives in your data center, and making sure that we continue to extract the best possible performance.
Now, GQ, I know that you're on the line, and there is one notable part about this I should call out just for our customers. It's something that is a lot more recent, something that they may not be aware of. But here about a couple months ago, Microsoft certified us as the first ever software vendor certified for their SQL I/O reliability program. And GQ, you took lead on that. Maybe you can chime in just a minute of what that means and how important that is for our customers.
And thanks, Brian. Yeah, Microsoft has certain programs like this one here to make sure products like ours are completely compatible with their software, in this case, the SQL Server. And I consider this a very elite certification, Brian. Not only did we have to do the certification test, we also had to go in front of a board of SQL experts and get our product passed through them. And as you said, we're the first software products certified under this certification, but we're in good company with people like HP, Dell, and others like that. So it's a very nice certification, Brian.
And those customers listening in, obviously, they know us for what we're doing on the commercial side, to help them with I/O performance, eliminating a big chunk of noisy, unnecessary I/O that's otherwise just chewing up IOPS and causing everything to run slower. But what they may not know is that we also have a very large footprint on the OEM side, where iterations of different pieces of our technology are OEM'd, and big footprints with Samsung, HP, Dell, Lenovo, SanDisk, Western Digital over the years, and that's only just to name a few. So I know that those of our audience listening in say, hey, let's get the sales guy out of the way and let's tee up the chief architect. So let me try to get out of the way as quickly as possible. Although I just want to outline for you here is what is new in V-locity 7.0. What that means, and we're going to have Rick share his screen. He's going to step you through the UI and give you the touch and feel experience associated with this. But the number one big thing at the very top is the fact that with V-locity version 7, that finally there is no reboot required to install or update the software. Now, there's a lot of other features that we've delivered in the product line, and a lot of features we're doing now with our, for instance, our benefits dashboard, and how we're communicating the value, what the software is doing, that I'm excited about. But frankly, I think that this feature being delivered to our customers, I've never seen more exuberant response from customers that are excited just about the fact that they simply just don't have to reboot anymore, and the software now is finally set and forget. Now, what a lot of people don't know is why for us the reboot is overcoming that was such a big challenge. And Rick, I'll have you speak to it in just a minute. And I don't know if our audience read Rick's blog, kind of on our holy grail search for no reboot. We play at the storage driver level, and as far as we know, there's no other software vendor that plays at the storage driver level that's been able to solve this problem. However, due to our relationship with Microsoft, due to Rick's vast knowledge of the NTFS file system and how we work and play with the operating system, the team was able to come up with a fix for this. And Rick, this is something I know that you had been working on and had been frameworking different solutions for this over the years until you were finally able to find a fix.
Yeah, we actually investigated several different possible ways of handling this. Anybody that's real familiar with Windows internals knows that for a long time, Windows has had a filter manager that allowed for network and file system filters to be attached and detached live, mostly for backup utilities and for anti-malware type people. And a few years ago, one of the anti-malware companies, I was having a conversation with their lead technical people at a Microsoft Plugfest, and we were talking about this because, as Brian pointed out, it's something we've thought about and we've wanted to do for an extended period of time. But generally, we invest our engineering resources in features specifically aimed at giving you even better performance and addressing the new upcoming things happening in the technology space. But it became clear that we really needed to address this issue. So our enterprise customers, we really thought that with Microsoft's update windows on Update Tuesdays, Patch Tuesdays, that people would be updating more often. Well, it turns out in the enterprise space, people still don't have reboot windows. They don't really want to be changing their environments that often. So this became more critical. And so, yeah, we investigated a couple solutions. One solution that actually would have been a simpler solution, we were concerned about anti-malware products might view us as potentially as a rootkit virus. I talked personally with the chief developers of most of the antivirus companies about it, and it was kind of an iffy situation. So I went back and did some more looking into the internals. We were in the very earliest stages. We actually wrote the original defrag hooks for NTFS in the first and for NT 3.51. So we have a long-term both relationship with Microsoft and experience on the internals. And we came up with a solution that allowed us to do this in such a way that it would not cause us to be recognized by anti-malware as a problem, and yet would still accomplish the end result of letting us get the plumbing done that needed to be done for us to do live work.
Yep, and in fact, since this release and since the release notes dropped to our customer base, we just have not had a smoother rollout, and it really has been just wonderfully accepted, by our V-locity customer base up to this point. Now, in the second bullet point, Rick will show you this. This is the benefit dashboard, the new benefit dashboard that shows storage time saved. It doesn't show just storage time saved, but gives a lot deeper, more granular view into what we're actually doing. What percentage of your read traffic are we offloading from storage? Obviously, most of that coming from the tier 0 cache strategy from IntelliMemory. On the flip side of that is, well, what does it mean? What percentage of our write traffic are we offloading by eliminating excessively small, tiny writes and reads, solving some of those severe inefficiencies in the handoff of data, and ensuring denser I/O, larger, more cleaner, more contiguous writes and reads. For a lot of customers who had bought V-locity, they bought it, and on day one, they could have the aha moment of, oh, well, here's where we have this performance problem before. We installed your software, and then you solved that performance problem. What we had a more difficult time is sharing with customers the story of the value that the product was actually delivering on a very granular level, as time changed, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, when their environment has changed. They might have transitioned to cloud. How are we helping them, in the cloud? They might have transitioned to hyper-converged or all flash on the back end. How relevant, how, number one, viable, but then secondarily, if viable, how relevant, how much benefit are we getting there? And this new benefit dashboard is fully transparent on the level of value that you are getting from the software in any system. And then also it helps now with tuning recommendations. As you can see there below, memory tuning alerts. You can see, are you getting a optimal caching benefit? Is there enough available memory for us to play with and give you a nice caching benefit? If there isn't, Rick's going to show you. We give you some automatic alerts there so you can identify the systems. And then now a single pane view of all the systems that you can list by workload. It just had a very quick scan, and this is particularly beneficial for those with 100 or more servers. You just can't afford the time to go into each one individually to see how the software is performing on each one, and you can quickly scan and see what is the software doing. How much read traffic is it offloading? How much write traffic is it offloading? But if it's a very light workload, do you even care? So you have the ability to list systems by workload, so you can really call out those key systems, those VIP systems that need the most attention. See what the software is doing on those, and if there's memory tuning recommendations, well then clearly those are the most important ones to dig into and see if you can afford to provision a little bit more memory on those VMs so you're getting even more benefit of the software. Now this benefits dashboard I'm referring to, some of you have already seen it if you've upgraded to V-locity 6.2. It was a major feature that we were going to include in V-locity 7, but while we waited on some of the other components, we didn't want you to be held up on getting the benefits dashboard, so we did give you an early release in 6.2, but there have been some enhancements to that now in V-locity version 7. So with that said, Rick, what I'm going to do is tee it up for you, and if you don't mind, if you can just share your screen. Rick is going to take you through the live demo here, the touch and feel. This shouldn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes, at which time we will go to Q&A. Now what I do ask is all of you should have a Q&A box open. It should be on the bottom right-hand side. If you don't see it on the bottom right-hand side, just highlight the big Q&A button or icon at the top of your screen. That will open up that field for you. And you can put in your comment or your question. Address it to all panelists, so that way Rick and GQ and I can see it, and then we will address your questions as we go along or address any at the bottom of the hour. So with that said, Rick, please go ahead and share your screen. So Rick, if you just go right up to, let's see, share, and go right into share, you will see the very first option is my screen.
I do see that, and you people on the line can see that I actually don't do this very often, but when I go to my screen, it's not highlighted. So I don't know.
Don, can you pass the presentation? Or here, I can pass the presentation ball to Rick.
Okay.
Oh, Rick has it.
Now I'm the presenter. Okay, now
Yeah.
I can share my screen. I want to share monitor too. There we go. And you should start seeing this soon.
I do see it.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to start in VMC because the dashboard essentially looks the same, mostly the same on VMC and Velocity, and I can show you a few other things as a result. So here's the dashboard that Brian was talking about. There are a couple of internal things. For those of you who have been around with the product for a while, you notice that some of the updates were fairly slow if you had a lot of systems. We now cache data locally on VMC front that we get every so often from the end nodes. We try to do it in a way that dramatically limits the network bandwidth. We're not interested in causing you issues. Obviously, we're a performance product. We're not a performance degradator. So we bring it forward and make it so that you can get results much quicker. So, however, if I do something like change the time frame, that does require that we go back out and ask for the data again. So if you decide to do that, and that will, one of the things that we fixed in this versus 6.2 was that that used to not stick with when you change tabs from the dashboard to the IO performance or to the analytics side of it where we have the graphs. And by the way, for those of you who wonder why this takes a while, it's because the graphing software that we use in JavaScript just takes a while to create the graphs. So okay,
Rick, what you're saying is that when somebody comes and logs right into the UI and looks at the dashboard, the data that's displaying on the dashboard, I guess, really is about as relevant as up to the last hour. So there is no more need to have to update results every time they come into the UI.
Right. So given the fact that the reason you're using a console is because you have more than a handful of installations. Now, the environment that I have, this is running on my own personal system. It's just a handful of VMs. I can spin up more if I needed to, but I set up just for the sake of this demo. Unfortunately, yesterday I had intended yesterday to spend the whole day jacking up some of these numbers. And
Thank
as
you, Rick, as the sales and marketing guy, whatever.
Yeah.
Did that. But yeah, we're just talking just test systems here.
As Murphy would have it, I had a hardware issue yesterday, and I had to do some repairs. So I didn't get the time to do that. So, but these are just test systems. One of the things we did in this version is we put in these tooltips, so I can do things like click on that and get the help for that specific page. So you can get greater insight into what the page means. The help is also allows us to make more dynamic changes. You have local help on your system, but we first start by going out and checking on the internet to see if this particular computer has access to our main website, in which case we pull the help from there, so that if we figure that certain things are confusing and the customer really needs more information, we can go out and change the help much more quickly than having to ship you a new set of help files or some kind of a patch or whatever. So these little ones here just give you a brief explanation as to what these particular sections are and what we're trying to relay there. The same sort of thing happens all the way through on the IO performance one as well. So that's kind of the general overview. Whoops, I didn't really mean to click that. I'm going to go for a second. I know this isn't about DiskKeeper, but I'm going to go to a DiskKeeper display, which is roughly the same. Now, the reason I'm going to go to the DiskKeeper display is that one of the things we changed, if you go back here, you notice we have millions. And if for those of you who've been around for a while, you notice that every once in a while this would overflow because we were eliminating so many IOs. So one of the things we did is we changed it so we'd have millions, and then on the, we'd go to terabytes, we'd go to billions, here's gigabytes, terabytes, that we would make the numbers relevant to the size. And that's one of the things we did both in DiskKeeper and in V-locity. Now this DiskKeeper is actually running on my system. So I use V-locity for test purposes on my primary system, and it won't let you install, VMC. It won't let you install V-locity and VMC on the same system. So to bypass that, because I actually care about my own personal performance, this is actually live data just since the 11th of May for my personal system that I run and do development and whatever stuff on. So so you can see that just now one of the things that helped with these terabytes workload was I actually had to copy a 2 terabyte volume that I lost yesterday after I found a way to recover the data. So that's kind of why my data is so large. But anyway.
Well, and I should also point out for those listening in, by the way, clearly, obviously you're using your V-locity on your virtual servers and physical servers. If you would like to run a copy of our SSD Keeper or DiskKeeper on your own personal system, just let your account manager know. We're more than happy to send you an NFR to run in your system. So Rick, back to you.
Okay, so I can click on Select Systems and select the systems I want to see on the dashboard. And I've got 3 up right now. And one of the things that we did was we added a little more data here so you get a rough idea on a per system basis of what's going on. And all of this is actually, these are sortable by columns. So let's say I wanted to sort based on workload, I could sort that way and have it and have the ones that have the highest workload, or if I want to get the ones with the highest total IOs eliminated, I could sort in both ways. So all the columns are sortable, gives you a chance to kind of check out where the benefits are the best across your installations. Another thing you'll notice is we have these icons for system status. And what they do is they effectively allow you to see if there's an issue. Now in these cases, this is about memory and not adequate memory for IntelliMemory to do its work. But there are quite a number of things that can pop up in there, and we dynamically create this tooltip text based on the specific issues that we're doing. So I'm going to cancel back out of here. And then, oh no, one of the things I wanted to do was, so another thing that we've done is we've added the ability to create a CSV file and download the basic benefits of our software. So I can download it and it'll go to wherever the download folder is for your browser. Now I happen to be using Edge, so that's actually going to ask me if I want to save it or whatever. So I'll click OK. I can save as, do whatever. So I'm going to cancel out of here because I've already done this before today. So here's an Excel spreadsheet. It's a CSV file. And we've added a whole bunch of things, including a lot of stuff that we don't actually report in the dashboard, such as actually the number of read IOs, the total size of the reads, writes, that kind of stuff. Another thing we've added is there's a column here. We actually now track whether or not your system that we're running on has SQL Server running. Now that's not SQL because almost every system nowadays has SQL running, because most software vendors nowadays are using SQL Express because it's free and it's an easy way to do a database. So this is actually that you have SQL Server running. And as Brian kind of alluded to earlier, one of the areas we're focusing on a lot right at the moment in terms of future technologies and work that we're doing for the future is work specifically around how to do even better in a SQL environment. So, so that's one of the things that you can do now is you can get this data. We use it internally. You'll be asked by the sales engineers solutions engineers to provide this in all likelihood, and that gives us the ability to slice and dice data and present management reports that are better for management in general, and make it easier to tell that story, which is what Brian was alluding to. So with that,
Rick, I should just go ahead and chime in with that too, just for those listening in. If any of those listening in feel that there is value to socializing the data from the dashboard with any other members on your team or your own superiors, where you need to evangelize or socialize the value of what the software is doing, you can let us know. We can assist in the extraction of that data and put it into a nice, clean executive summary, and then sit down with the rest of your team or even your superiors and cover that data with you.
Thanks, Brian. So, so this is a system. It's a Windows 10 system, an x64 system. It has plenty of memory allocated to it, so IntelliMemory and everything gives enough stuff. And you'll notice that the status down here on the end, this is something that's different about the V-locity screen versus the VMC screen, is you have the status and you have, and this can be color-coded, this memory usage, if there's an issue. So let me move to another system. This is probably a Windows 2012 R2 system. You'll notice it's yellow. This tooltip, if I hover over it, will effectively tell you that caching is limited. Consider adding more memory and we can do a better job of caching. You'll also notice that in the status. The status could have additional information, like I mentioned on the VMC page. It isn't just necessarily memory. Here's my domain controller for this particular series of VMs, and you'll notice that it's red. There's no memory available. You notice there's no caching. There's basically zero memory free. It's a very limited memory system, obviously on purpose. And then the tooltip will tell you that, and it'll also, on the status, will tell you a lot more than just that. But that's what's happening in this particular case. So, so that's kind of my 10,000-foot view of the software and the changes. I'll send it back. We'll send it out for questions, or send it back to Brian, and
yeah,
we can go from there.
If you can, well, here, I'll take the presentation ball back. And Don, I believe that our deck should come back up. Or Rick, maybe you can transition the presentation ball over to me. Okay, there it is. I will just do one quick slide here, and then we'll just turn it to Q&A. I didn't see any questions that came in so far. So if you do have any questions or comments, start chiming those in now, because I'm just going to cover this slide, and then we'll cover questions if there are any. But since so many customers are running our software on not just everything, but particularly the most important applications in their environment, which is we find most often is their SQL systems, there is this 3-step best practice to make sure you're getting the most value from the product. Step number 1, this is very important, and this is about just buying into the overall Tier 0 cache strategy. And if you have a SQL system, the very best thing you can do is, if you have extra memory available sitting on that host that you can provision to that VM, if you may, obviously the first question is, how much should I add? If it's a big, hard-hitting system, we would love it if you would add 16 gig and start there. But if you can't afford 16 gig, add 8. If you can't add 8, add 4, and then jump to step 2. Now the next thing you have to do is you have to cap SQL memory usage, so that the additional memory you added actually goes to the operating system and for our software, because our software will automatically pick up and use whatever the operating system isn't using. As you know, SQL, no matter how much memory you give it, it just keeps taking and taking, no matter how much memory you give it. The big inefficiency with SQL is how inefficient it is with its memory usage. That's one of the big reasons why our software is able to drive such big performance gains on top of SQL systems, aside from just solving the Windows write inefficiencies. Now, if there is no additional memory for you to add, well, then just cap SQL a little more aggressively. The high likelihood is that right now you cap SQL leaving 4 gig for the OS. We would say bump that up a little bit, cap SQL leaving 8 gig for the OS in our software. You should still get some good gains with that. And in case you didn't know, the cache does leverage up to 128 gig of RAM per system. So if you have a hard-hitting box, you need to get the most performance possible and serve as much out of DRAM, which is exponentially faster than SSD. We can really help you build that big cache and serve 90% plus of your reads from that. And then the last step is step 3, just what Rick showed you, monitor the dashboard. If you're not seeing optimal cache rates, if you're looking at your how much I/O we're offloading from storage, if we're offloading less than 50% of I/O traffic and particularly less than 50% of your read traffic from storage, just add a little bit more memory. Watch that number rise. And for us, for at least with most of our customers, to see when they do get in that 50% mark or more, that's where they can really feel the wind of that addition of not just at getting even more I/O capacity handed back to underlying storage and eliminate the unnecessarily chewing up of even more IOPS, but it's just lowering those latencies even further and further opening up throughput to storage for your other applications. So with that said, I just wanted to cover that point. I am going to just take a sip of the water here, and we'll wait for your questions as they roll in. And if no questions, then obviously, and you have to drop, feel free to drop. You can clearly just download and install yourself on your own, but if you would like the assistance of one of our SEs to do some hand-holding with you, it should take no more than 15 or 20 minutes at the most. Just let us know, and we're more than happy to jump on the phone with you while you push that out. The only thing we want to do is we just want to see what are the results that you're getting. So after you do the upgrade or have us assist you with the upgrade, all we want to do is just follow up with you in a couple weeks and take a look at the dashboard and talk about, are there any tuning recommendations needed, answer any questions, and just helps us give a view into your own real-world production workloads to see what we're doing and how we can help you. So if you do that upgrade yourself, just alert us so we can circle back with you to do that dashboard review session, and then also identify, does it make sense to do an executive summary? Do you need that to socialize the value across your team and with superiors? So I don't see any questions coming in at this time. I think that maybe we should just hold on for just a minute before we drop and give customers a chance to add something in if needed. GQ, I know you're listening in. You work with customers all the time. You're on reviewing their dashboards. I know Rick has been quite comprehensive. I just wanted just to ask you, do you feel that we missed anything in covering this? Any other tips or knowledge points that we should bring up?
No, I think you covered everything, Brian. And I just want to reiterate the point of capping SQL with SQL servers. And if you need any help on that, the sales rep or the SE can reference a Microsoft knowledge base article on doing that. Otherwise, I think you covered everything, Brian.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in right now, so I'm going to take that as a good sign, Rick. And Rick, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your busy engineering schedule to jump in and do some sales and marketing activity with us. So the post-sales support is certainly appreciated. And GQ, also thank you for being on the line. And we can't wait to circle back with all of our customers and review your dashboard with you once you upgrade. So as soon as you upgrade or want our help, let us know. And then let's circle back. Let's review the dashboard. There might be some recommendations that we can give you to help you get even more value from the software. So we appreciate so much your business, and can't wait to connect with you and see what the software is doing for you. So thanks, Rick. Thanks, GQ.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, actually, no, one question, and I already see some of our attendees are dropping off, but one question, and this is a really good question, and Jason asks, how does velocity work with all-flash arrays? Now, Rick, I'll throw that over to you. I'll kind of take it from the high-level sales answer, then you can take it in deeply. And just, Jason, for us, our view isn't we have no view or care what the back end is, whether it's disk or flash. All that we're doing on the very top of the stack is doing some optimizations at the very top before that Windows write leaves in the first place. So now you're getting larger, cleaner, contiguous writes. What does that mean to your all-flash array? It means had you gotten that file without our optimization, it's possible that you would have had to serve 4 I/O for the same file that we can process as one I/O. So what's faster? Even if your IOPS are fast and your latencies are low, what's faster? The same file with 4 I/O or the same file with 1 I/O? As you know, each I/O takes a measure of time. That's how velocity benefits that write optimization to the flash array. Then obviously the second piece of it is the DRAM read caching engine. We're eliminating all those hot reads that would otherwise traverse the whole stack, go all the way down the storage and back. And it just makes no sense to do that when an enormous amount of your read data is hot common data in any 24-hour period. And we can keep that from going down to storage at all. We can keep that from chewing up your IOPS and give that I/O capacity back to you. So, Rick, that's kind of the high-level sales answer that we give. I don't know if you want to go any deeper with that answer.
Sure, Brian. There's a couple of things that I would say on that, and that is that it's easy to think that all of our optimization technologies, obviously a fair amount of this conversation has been about IntelliMemory, the caching, and indeed the very fact that you have a virtualized environment means that you have a lot of cross-node conflict, and eliminating I/Os out of the stream or making them larger more essentially by eliminating IOPS, by making them larger, means that there's less conflict across the systems. But one of the things that we've done down through the years is our file system optimizations. We no longer look at trying to make the file system perfect. We try to make the file system better for what applications actually need. So we still do file system optimizations, but as technology was evolving and we could see things like all flash coming and all that kind of stuff, we started looking at, okay, so where are the real problems that cause severe problems for your application directly without necessarily, regardless of what your back-end storage looks like. And so we have a bunch of optimization technologies that we built. We early on in the presentation, Brian mentioned various OEMs. We were involved in some of the very earliest SSD manufacturers in doing some specialized technologies, because at the end of the day, the file system and the operating system still cause other kinds of issues in the for your applications and for the storage array and everything else like that. Making those come through more contiguous, making those better causes overall there to be less problems. And then there are some extreme cases, and we see this in Exchange servers and stuff like that. You can actually get into a situation where the file system can't extend files any longer because the files have become so badly fragmented. So as time has gone on, we've evolved our technologies and added new technologies specifically to account for that the arrays are changing, that the back ends are changing. And as Brian said, we can use a small amount of memory. Now, I'd like to make, as long as I've got the mic, on the SQL, you'll notice in his last slide that he talks about just leave a little bit of memory for us. And you say, well, why leave a little bit of memory? You know, why not take a whole bunch? Well, our caching algorithms were specifically designed to take a small amount of memory and look for noisy I/Os, the kinds of I/Os that SQL or your other applications that may do caching on their own are not going to look for, and remove those entirely out of the stream. Well, again, eliminating those, even with an all-flash array backend, means that the all-flash array isn't having to, that the applications on the VMs isn't having to compete down a single stream for the I/O bandwidth to the all-flash array. Even though it's huge, it's still a pipe. And just removing things out of the pipe makes a difference.
Now, Rick, as a follow-up, Jason mentioned here, he wanted a little more specifically, he's fiber connected to his EMC Unity, all-flash array. And Jason, we do have lots of customers that are running that exact same backend. But ultimately, since this is doing a top-of-the-stack optimization, we could care less, what the underlying storage architecture is, what the underlying network architecture is. Since those optimizations are happening at the very top of the stack, it's why we're also hypervisor agnostic. It just means that since we're solving some of those root cause performance issues and establishing that tier 0 cache strategy, it just simply means that everything downstream accrues benefit, no matter how it's connected into your environment.
In fact, if I may step in for just a half a second,
Please.
Jason, in one of the earlier slides, Brian actually specifically gave a quote from Christus Health, and they happen to have that exact environment that you were talking about, and they just they wouldn't dream of running without us because they recognize all of the things that get in the way of their performance. Even though they're running all flash arrays, they're running the whole thing with fiber and the whole 9 yards, and they're a big fan of our stuff.
And you know, one other thing I just want to point out, if you ever look at storage components, they always give two different benchmarks, Jason. They give benchmarks of random I/O and sequential I/O. You always notice that the sequential I/O always outperform the random I/O. And what we're enforcing the file system to do is deliver nice sequential write I/Os down to the storage. So you're actually getting the most out of your storage by having us on there.
Okay, well, good. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in at this time. So if there is, by chance, any questions the audience does have, please take that up directly with your account manager. They'll loop in an SE if needed, and we just want to make sure that no stone is left unturned. So with that said, I think that we can allow our audience to go. If you've hung on up to this point, Rick, thank you so much for your time here. GQ, thank you for joining. And for our customers, we will speak with you soon, and I can't wait to look at your dashboards with you. Thank you.